He took a good deal of exercise at this period and was fond of taking exploring walks in the valley and adjacent mountain. One evening, he strolled out accompanied by General Gorgo, my sister, and myself into a meadow in which some cows were grazing. One of these, the moment she saw our party, put her head down and, I believe, her tail up, and advanced a pas de charge against the emperor. He made a skillful and rapid retreat, and leaping nimbly over a wall, placed this rampart between himself and the enemy. But General Gorgo valiantly stood his ground, and drawing his sword, threw himself between his sovereign and the cow, exclaiming, "This is the second time I have saved the emperor's life." Napoleon laughed heartily when he heard the general's boast and said, "He ought to have put himself in the position to repel cavalry." I told him the cow appeared tranquilized and stopped the moment he disappeared, and he continued to laugh and said, "She wished to save the English government the expense and trouble of keeping him." The emperor, during his residence under my father's roof, occupied only one room and a marquee. The room was one my father had built for a ballroom. There was a small lawn in front, railed round, and in this railing, the marquee was pitched, connected with the house by a covered way. The marquee was divided into two compartments, the inner one forming Napoleon's bedroom. And at one extremity of the external compartment, there was a small tent bed with green silk hangings, on which General Gorgo slept. It was the bedstead used by the emperor in all his campaigns. Between the two divisions of the tent was a crown, which his devoted servants had carved out of the turf floor, and it was so placed that the emperor could not pass through without placing his foot on this emblem of royal dignity. Napoleon seemed to have no penchant for the pleasures of the table. He lived very simply and cared little or nothing about what he ate. He dined at 9, and at that hour Cipriani, the maître d'hôtel, made his appearance, and with a profound reverence said in a solemn tone, "Le dîner de votre majesté est servi." He then retreated backwards, followed by Napoleon and those of his suite who were to dine with him. When he had finished, he would abruptly pass away his chair from the table and quit the dining room, apparently glad it was over. A few days after his arrival, he invited my sister and myself to dine with him, and began quizzing the English for their fondness of roast beef and plum pudding. I accused the French, in return, of living on frogs. And running into the house, I brought him a caricature of a long, lean Frenchman with his mouth open, his tongue out, and a frog on the tip of it, ready to jump down his throat. Underneath was written, "A Frenchman's dinner." He laughed at my impertinence and pinched my ear, as he often did when he was amused, and sometimes when a little provoked at my espièglerie. Le Petit Lescazes, as he called Count Lescazes' son, formed one of the party on that day. He was in a lad of 14, and the emperor was fond of quizzing me about him and telling me I should be his wife. Nothing enraged me so much, could not bear to be considered such a child, and particularly at that moment, for there was a ball in prospect, to which I had great hopes Papa would allow me to go, and I knew that his objection would be founded on my being too young. Napoleon, seeing my annoyance, desired young Lescazes to kiss me, and he held both my hands whilst the little page saluted me. I did all in my power to escape, but in vain. The moment, however, that my hands were at liberty, I boxed Le Petit Lescazes' ear most thoroughly, but I determined to be revenged on Napoleon, and in descending to the cottage to play whist, an opportunity presented itself, which I did not allow to escape. There was no internal communication between the part occupied by the emperor and the rest of the house, and the path leading down was very steep and very narrow. There being barely room for one person to pass at a time, Napoleon walked first, Lescazes next, then his son, and lastly, my sister Jane. I allowed the party to proceed very quietly until I was left about 10 yards behind, and then I ran with all my force on my sister Jane. She fell with extended hands on the little page. He was thrown upon his father, and the Grand Chamberlain, to his dismay, was pushed against the Emperor, who, although the shock was somewhat diminished by the time it reached him, still had some difficulty from the steepness of the path in preserving his footing. I was in ecstasies at the confusion I had created and exulted in the revenge I had taken for the kiss. But I was soon obliged to change my note of triumph. Las Casas was thunderstruck at the insult offered to the emperor, became perfectly furious at my uncontrollable laughter. He seized me by the shoulders and pushed me violently on the rocky bank. It was now my turn to be enraged. I burst into tears of passion and turning to Napoleon cried out, "Oh, sir, he's hurt me!" "Never mind," replied the emperor. "Ne pleure pas. I will hold him while you punish him." And a good punishing he got. I boxed the little man's ears until he begged for mercy. But I would show him none, and at length Napoleon let him go, telling him to run, and that if he could not run faster than I, he deserved to be beaten again. He immediately started off as fast as he could, and I after him, Napoleon clapping his hands and laughing immoderately at our race around the lawn. Las Casas never liked me after this adventure. He used to call me a rude hoyden. Chapter 5. Oh, that those lips had language. Life has passed with me but roughly since I heard thee last. Those lips are thine. Thine own sweet smile I see. Cowper. Napoleon's condescension in entering into and promoting the amusements of children. His beautiful hand. Anecdote of the sword. Miniatures of the King of Rome and other branches of the Emperor's family. The game of whist. The ball dress. I never met with anyone who bore childish liberties so well as Napoleon. He seemed to enter into every sort of mirth or fun with the glee of a child, and though I have often tried his patience severely, I never knew him to lose his temper or fall back upon his rank or age to shield himself from the consequences of his own familiarity or of his indulgence to me. I looked upon him, indeed, when with him, almost as a brother or companion of my own age, and all the cautions I received, and my own resolutions to treat him with more respect and formality, were put to flight the moment I came within the influence of his arch smile and laugh. If I approached him more gravely than usual, and with a more sedate step and subdued tone, he would perhaps begin by saying, "Eh bien, qu'as-tu, Mademoiselle Betsy? Has the petite Las Casas proved inconstant? If he have, bring him to me." Or some other playful speech which either pleased or teased me, and made me at once forget all my previous determinations to behave prettily.